Your story is important.
Every life matters.
Speak up.
Take it one day at a time.
Normalize mental health resources.
Only you can play your part.
Turn off the phone and talk to somebody face to face.
Suicide is preventable.
Suicide is preventable.
Together we stand stronger.
Suicide is preventable.
You're not alone. Together we are stronger.
Suicide is preventable.
You are not alone.
Together we stand stronger.
Suicide is preventable.
Suicide is preventable. You are not alone.
Together we stand stronger.
Suicide is preventable.
You are not alone.
Together we stand stronger.
Suicide is preventable.
Let's talk about this more. I started getting my information from a social worker because my son has congenital heart defects, so he's always in the hospital and stuff like that. There was always a social worker coming to me and letting me know, giving me information and stuff. So that's how I got my information. And then now, since he's no longer in the hospital, I just read about it online.
When I was suffering from an eating disorder, I didn't really realize that it was a mental health issue until I heard people start talking about it on Instagram. And then I started just Googling it, and that's kind of how I found out more. But I think most of it comes from social media, which can be good and bad because obviously it can be skewed.
I go for my information on majority from social media, I would say.
I think social media, I don't want to say it shows enough, but
I feel like people have gotten more open regarding mental illness. I feel like there's a lot more conversation going. The stigma is still alive and well because people aren't talking about the right things. I feel like people are more often than not self-diagnosing, especially on social medias. People drop the word depression or anxiety or OCD, and it kind of takes away the value and the validity of illnesses like that. I feel like the stigma that surrounds mental health and mental illnesses is people automatically assume oh, it's just crazy people, and the study psychology is just studying crazy people, thinking these crazy things, seeing things that aren't really there and hearing things that aren't real, when honestly that is hardly ever the case.
mental health is literally, it's a health condition like anything else. If someone has a cold, they go to the doctor and get medicine for it, but if people have a mental health issue, they don't get help because it seems like such a negative thing.
We're normal people dealing with very hard situations, and I hate it. I hate when people say, just get over it. I can't just, if I could, I wouldn't be in this, in this situation. But society, if they see you happy, they're gonna be oh, she's not dealing with depression. You have to be sad all the time. You have to be crying, but that's not the deal, because most of us have a life and, we have to keep going, but we're still dealing with it.
Mental illnesses can stretch from things that are not as common, like schizophrenia, and goes all the way until things that are really, really common, especially amongst college students, like anxiety.
I had an eating disorder for a couple years in my undergraduate career, and I suffered with that for a couple years. I didn't realize that it was a mental health issue for a long time. I just thought I was being super healthy because I'm in the fitness world, and I just thought exercising more and eating less was healthy. So for a while I denied that it was actually affecting my health. In my eating disorder, I struggled a bit with anxiety because when you're in such a structured thing, it's hard, you get really anxious when you're trying to break out of that. But now I'm lucky that I don't really struggle with anxiety or depression or any other mental health issues, but a lot of my loved ones do, so I've definitely had a lot of experience with it.
When I was in high school, I was struggling with some challenges that I just had no clue how to deal with, couldn't wrap my mind around how to handle those challenges. And as a result, because I just didn't know what to do and it was stressed me out to think about how to deal with the situation, I used to just keep myself super, super busy so I didn't have a chance to think. Because I was keeping myself so busy all the time and trying to prevent myself from thinking about my challenges, I was also developed some like eating disorder habits. I would not eat amongst my busy schedule. I would kind of stop eating. I had some bulimic tendencies. Sometimes I'd throw up after I'd eat. Or like just exercise excessively even if I hadn't eaten all day. And I was already aware that what I was doing wasn't healthy, but it was starting to take a toll on my physical health. I was getting sick all the time. I asked some people what they thought about therapy or counseling, but generally the attitude I got was, oh, what good is that going to do? Although my friends who are around my age range were like, why not give it a chance? When I reached out to older mentors, a lot of folks had that attitude that like, what is counseling? What is therapy? What is it going to do? Also, when I discussed with my parents the idea of going, they were sort of like, why do you need to go? What are people going to say about you? What are people going to say about our family if they find out that you're going? So a lot of that sort of in collectivist communities, just trying to like preserve your individual reputation and your family's reputation.
I was diagnosed with PTSD, depression, and anxiety. With like my PTSD, like yesterday, I had a big anxiety attack because my son was crying when I dropped him off at school. The way he was crying really took me back to a very hard moment in my life. He was like 4 months. He was on hospice. He was on oxygen. He started crying like uncontrollably, and he just stopped breathing in my arms. Like he was in my arms when he stopped breathing. And then the way I heard him cry yesterday really gave me anxiety, and I was just in my car freaking out. That's what PTSD is, you know, like I can't control it, you know, even though I know he's doing better now. It's just that those moments, that trigger was just hard. I can be fine one day and then the next day I see something on TV that has to deal with, you know, a baby in a hospital, and it just triggers me and I start crying. I can't just get over it. I can't. I'm gonna have to live with this for the rest of my life. The only thing I can do is, you know, take it one day at a time.
My mom, she's like bipolar. The hard thing about that is that, you know, I do believe that it's genetics, you know, it does run down in the family. With my mom, the hard part is with her is that she hasn't accepted it. She motivated me in a way where ultimately I want to be a better person because of her. I have anxieties on a daily basis today, and I smoked weed because of it, because I felt like it would calm me down. It would help bring concentration for myself too. I even like got into drinking. Like it was pretty bad. Like recently I made the decision of quitting and try to go sober. It's really hard, trust me. I want to do it only because I know I'm an alcoholic. If I don't pay attention, I'll be drinking on a normal basis, like a daily basis, and I don't want to, you know. I could feel the difference of my mind of like not being focused and everything. I feel like sometimes it's a setback. I'm tired of, you know, feeling like I'm alone, and I do believe we all can go somewhere and become something as long as like we overcome our challenges. Today I'm still struggling, but I'm working on it.
I feel like I've always been a sad, nervous kid. My second year of college, that's when everything started kind of hitting me. There's just a lot going on, and I felt like I've already exhausted all my resources of, you know, going to my friends or going to family about this. And I felt like it was time to seek professional help. It was a journey. I saw about 8 therapists before I found one that was a real match with me. After going to therapy, they suggested I take SSRIs, which are antidepressants, and I was really hesitant at first because, you know, I wasn't really educated about the world of psychiatry. You know, I decided to give it a shot, and after the first week, I think, it was kind of just like opening the door to like a whole new world, because it's like all my life I've been eating McDonald's fries, and it's like McDonald's fries, like they're good. They're not bad. They're really, really good. They're really tasty. And then when I started taking these meds, it's like all of a sudden I was at In-N-Out and it was like, these are fries and this is a burger. Like, I just started feeling things that I never thought I'd be able to feel, and it wasn't at like a heightened kind of level. It was more like I was brought onto a normal person's level of functioning, and I had no idea how low I used to be until I was up where everybody else was. And it made me realize, like, there was nothing fundamentally wrong with me. It was just my brain was structured a little different and needed a little push.
I had a best friend that committed suicide. He hung himself. He said the school that he went to, it wasn't very trustworthy, I would say. But if he would tell him, it'd be like, oh, why are you doing that? It was very judgmental, I guess you can say. So it wasn't really supportive.
Like 3 years ago, when I was like really in my lowest, I actually did go for help. I mean, I actually did go look for help, but it's so bad. Like, there's a wait list to see a therapist, and the first thing they do is prescribe you medication. Like, that's their answer, you know? And I'm not saying that medication is not like good, because there's a lot of people that use it and it helps them, you know. And I know a lot of moms that do use antidepressants, but sometimes that's not the answer. Sometimes, like for me, it didn't work. Like, I did try it, but it was too much for me. I was on the wait list for a therapist for about 6 months, and I wasn't able to see a therapist. Yeah. And that's what a lot of people deal with. And that's that I have Medi-Cal, you know. There's a lot of people that don't have insurance and they can't get help, you know. So that's one of the main problems. Like, I know a lot of people are like, oh, you know, like, why don't you just go look for help? Like, it's hard, you know, and it's expensive too. If you don't have insurance, it's expensive to look for a therapist, because you pay like what? I don't know, like $60 to $100 an hour to talk to someone, you know, and it sucks.
At one point, a friend of mine, she gave me a phone number for an imam that she was comfortable talking to, who she told me also had somewhat of a mental health background. So she gave me the number. I wasn't really ready to talk to anyone, so I just kind of threw it on my dresser. And I think it wasn't until about 6 months later, I attended a community event. Someone on the panel talked a lot about how they reached out to a therapist when they were struggling. And I just thought it was so brave that they just were so vulnerable and shared that background, and then spoke about how they reached out to a therapist. And so I was like, okay, maybe this is just what I need to do. It was the first time I heard someone positively talk about therapy and counseling in the Muslim community. I found that number that my friend had given me, and I gave that imam a call, and I kept it anonymous. I didn't tell him who I was. He heard me out, validated what I was saying, and just the way that he responded gave me a lot of agency. And he gave it kind of like a spiritual framework, which for me was very helpful to hear. I made a therapy appointment the next day, and I started going to counseling.
I think if I didn't have my son, I don't know. I don't know where I'd be. I don't know if I would still be here. I don't know. And my son is like one of my biggest inspirations and motivators to keep going. So when I first started, dealing with all this, I wouldn't tell anybody. Like, I wouldn't even talk to my husband, my mom. Like, I'm like, why would I talk to them? They don't know how I feel. They don't know what I'm dealing with, But little by little, also my husband has helped me too. He's like one of my biggest best friends. Like, I talk to him how I feel. The more you keep it inside, it's just getting bottled up, and then you get to a point where it just all comes out, and it might not come out in the right way. Talk even to yourself, like talk out loud how you feel, I've done much better, because there was like, when we came back from the hospital, when my son was like super sick, I spent like 2 weeks just crying and just very emotional, Now, like, I feel like I can, take a deep breath and be like, it's gonna be okay, And sometimes people need that, like, it's gonna be okay, you know. Like if a person doesn't have anyone to talk to, I feel like just writing, expressing yourself in a notebook or on social media. Like I don't care what people say, I'll post whatever I'm feeling on social media, because maybe at the moment I don't have anyone to talk to. I don't have a pen or a paper, you know. I have my phone all the time, so that moment, like if I'm feeling like super low, I'll just post it out, you know, because I need to let it out.
The hard part in mental illness, you really have to acknowledge like what's going on. If you don't acknowledge it, it's gonna overcome you. It's a huge importance today because it's happening to us all, and I do believe like majority of our homeless are out there because of this reasoning. I feel like options are being provided, but maybe not the right options.
What's helped me the most is having someone to talk to, you know, and having someone to just tell me that, you know, hey, you have a goal, you have something to do, you are the only one that can complete your life's goal. We're here, everybody's here for you, you know. Don't give up.
I went to a therapist and she gave me a lot of tools, but I used a lot of like positive affirmations and stuff, which can seem really cheesy, but they really helped me. Like if I knew I had to like if I was like going on a 3-day trip or something and I knew it was gonna be scary because unknown foods and whatnot, I would like write myself a long list of like affirmations. Learning how to rewire your thoughts towards yourself or your situation is really important.
But I took meds for a few months, and having medication and also seeing a psychologist regularly, I was able to acquire a lot of tools that helped me cope without either of them.
I've said this before on my social media, like I feel like a lot of people use social media as an outlet. You know, they put their feelings out there, and sometimes you'll see people like saying like they feel down or something like that, and I always tell them like, don't make those people feel like they can't do that, because that's also an outlet for them, you know? And instead of telling them like, oh my gosh, this person complains so much, how about you just message that person and ask them, are you okay? You know, do you need to talk? Because a lot of people, I feel like, you know, they look at stuff like that and they just think like, oh, this person's just complaining too much. This person is always sad and this and that. But no one really stops to think and, you know, be like, maybe this person needs help. It gets to the point where you're just like, I was waiting for 6 months to talk to somebody, you know, and I was just like, I'm done with this. Like throughout those 6 months, I was talking to my husband, and that helped me even more. People are looking for help, but it's, you know, sometimes the help is not there. Sometimes, you know, it's limited, and it sucks.
I want others that are in need of help to be able to express to others as well too, because you don't know the outcome if you don't help. If we want to become a stronger country or world, you know, I think we should bring importance into mental illness. If we brought more importance into like maybe healthier lifestyles, maybe even like family therapy too, because not saying that it's mandatory, but maybe make that even more as an important option, because a lot of families are hiding it today, where they do what they do and kids are growing up like this. There's nothing we can do about it because they're already dealt with so much.
And also, just see a therapist. I feel like you don't have to have a mental illness to see a therapist, because literally anyone can benefit from therapy.
I know it's like so cliche to say this, but just how are you doing today makes a big difference, you know? Even if I were to say I'm okay, but deep down I'm like dying, I feel like someone cares, you know? The fact that they ask me how am I doing is just big, you know?
It's just good to just be normal about it. I mean, I just tell people all the time, like, oh, I can't make it on Saturday, I have my therapy appointment. Just making it normal so that other folks who need those things, they can reach out. It's very common in the mental health field for mental health practitioners to be getting their own support outside of the work that they're doing. Understanding yourself and knowing that like, oh, I need a break, oh, I need a mental health day, or an emotional, emotionally relaxing day. I'm all for taking sick days just because you're mentally overwhelmed and just need a break. So just doing those types of things yourself, practicing it yourself so you're modeling the behavior, and then just being really open about it and sharing it with folks around you. My therapist, actually, she sees a lot of other therapists. Aside from normalizing our own experiences, it's also good when someone does reach out to you for help, to respond in a really compassionate and validating way and put your own values and judgments aside. Just be aware of resources around you so you can refer people to the correct places.
Out of the blue, say I'm doing something and then someone compliments me on something, it totally changes my day. If I have a bad day, someone says, "Oh, your hair looks nice," whatever. "Oh, thanks." It means a lot. It's so little too. It means the world if you're having a bad day. Being out there and being more kind. I know with me, I'm shy, so it's hard for me to just be like, "I like your shoes." You don't know people and what they're going through.
Because I'm like, okay, this person cares, I feel like I can go to that person and tell them how I feel.
I think the biggest thing to lower the stigma is just sharing your stories. I try to be really open because I know when I started hearing people sharing about experiences that seemed similar to mine, then I was like, okay, maybe I'm not alone in this. Maybe getting help will actually make it better. And I felt less like I needed to hide it. And in my situation, I heard a lot of just eat more, just eat a cheeseburger. And I'm like, well, it's not that easy. But even if you don't understand where the person's coming from, instead of giving them a quick fix, just try to, if you don't have anything that is going to be supportive or helpful, then just say that you're there for them.
Educating yourself first and foremost with valid sources. Always check a .org or a .edu, never .com. Ask questions. Ask your friends that are dealing with this kind of stuff the truth about mental illnesses. Ask, your doctor.
Think, oh, here's a number, call it. But how effective is that to just call a number and talk to somebody? It's getting put out there, but I feel like it doesn't connect to that person that needs help a lot more. There's always that, oh, but would I trust them to talk about my business? No. Then some people don't even want to try. They just don't even consider it.
I was also working for my local Mass chapter as a youth director. While I was going through all the counseling and for a little bit while I was in Davis. And I found that a lot of the Muslim youth that I was working with were having similar challenges and were considering therapy but just didn't think it would be effective, kind of the same barriers I had been dealing with. I had a few friends who were willing to give it a shot since I had shared my experience with therapy with them, but their families weren't okay with them going. So I used to drive them to their appointments, and we used to just make up stories like, oh, we're just going to the mall or hanging out. But that wasn't the most sustainable way to help everybody in the community. So I was just thinking a lot about the phone call that really helped me. I thought it would be really great if we could have a crisis hotline specifically for Muslim youth. I was aware that there were other crisis hotlines available that weren't Muslim specific. But I'd also tried going to therapy in a more, with a therapist who wasn't Muslim at one point, and I felt like I had to just sit there and explain myself for a really long time. I wanted to go get help, not educate someone about my cultural background. So I thought it would be really cool to have a crisis hotline for Muslim youth where when you call, you're speaking to another individual who's also Muslim and might understand the background that you're coming from. I reached out to some local hotlines about the logistics of running a line because none of us had any clue how to do it. California Youth Crisis Hotline was very, very helpful. I reached out to our local Mass chapter because they had a social services division and pitched the idea to them so we could get some support from an organization. And they were like, yeah, if you guys are willing to put it together, we'll run with it. It showed me how real the mental health stigma is. It showed me how many folks are really struggling. And it showed me that we need more people who will share their experiences so that to normalize it for other folks. It gave me the understanding that we need more Muslims working in the mental health or in social work fields, and creating more culturally competent resources for our community to help folks out who are struggling. And although we start out in Sacramento, I mean, folks anywhere in the United States can volunteer with us, and folks anywhere in the United States can call us for help. So,
but, you know, you never know until you try, and if you do try it doesn't work out, you can always find someone else.
Some of the misconceptions when even thinking of like a crisis line are the fact that a lot of people don't know what we're going to offer, don't know if they're going to talk to a machine, don't know if they're going to have to provide information. A lot of people are nervous to provide certain like demographic information with fears of actually like us sending emergency services. And a really important thing that I like to point out is that every single situation is so tailored to the person, what they're going through, who they are. And I think that's a really big thing to understand, is to know that we are going to handle every single situation accordingly. We're going to provide the resources that best fit your situation. We're going to best provide guidance and help and that support network for whatever that person in particular is struggling with, whether it be what we consider third party, someone like a friend, a mother, a father calling about someone else. We guide them on how to do risk assessment, suicide assessment, so they better know where they stand, whether that be if the person actually has suicidal intent or if it's desire. We like to be able to make that distinction because that's really important. You want to ask questions like, are you having thoughts of suicide? Do you want to kill yourself? In a very straightforward way without quote unquote beating around the bush, because you need to the person that you're talking to needs to understand whether that you're not referring to self-harm, that you're not referring to other mechanisms that they may turn to in order to have some sort of relief. We like to make the distinction of, okay, are you cutting yourself to take your own life, or is that to offer yourself some relief from what you're going through? So we ask very direct questions, not with the intention to push anyone. There's no buttons to push when it comes to calling a crisis line. When someone is in a crisis, they are, you know, when they're calling us, most of the time they're ambiguous, but you want to ask directly. There's no other way to ask. And my experience being on the lines is just that asking directly pulls out the answers out of people that they may not know. And because they don't know that, then we could address it and tell them, hey, so it doesn't seem like you know too much about this, and not in a degrading way, but in a way to, cool, let's get more information, let's help you understand this better so you can better help this person. Encouraging the person that's at risk, really providing that like really strong support is a really important thing. These people are in really fragile states, and they're very, a lot of the time they just really need that support and really need someone to talk to. And a lot of the times there's more extensive work to be done, but the thing you can do in the moment is kind of be that barrier and kind of be that person that is willing enough to just ask the really uncomfortable question of, are you thinking of killing yourself? And proceeding after that in whatever answer they give you. Not too many people know, and I actually didn't know myself until I started volunteering there, is that there is a difference between hotlines and calling what's called a warm line. Warm line, we like to direct some callers or provide that as a resource when someone wants to vent a little bit. They don't necessarily have to be in crisis, they can be, but they call a little bit more, and the counselors on those lines are trained a little bit more into just listening, providing resources, and so forth. A hotline would be like the suicide crisis line, hot for something a little bit higher in crisis. People that are unable to deal with some of the things that they're dealing with right now need immediate help, sometimes emergency services. So there is that distinction. When someone is a little bit lower risk, we don't necessarily cut them off, but we like to just send them over and at least give them the resources that they could call us if they have suicidal thoughts. But if not so much, you have the warm line. There's teen lines if we have someone that's younger. There's what's called the Trevor line. It's like the Trevor Project for LGBTQ. So there's a little bit of everything for everyone, and I think people need to understand that we're here and we're willing to give these resources. It's just pretty much getting over that hump of being able to call and just hearing another person and seeing that that's a little scary because it's actually another human being you're talking to, but understanding that we are trained to listen, we are trained to empathize with you, and we want to do that willingly. All you have to do is just call and see for yourself, and call for someone else. You can do that too. Call for a stranger online that you're worried about. All this stuff makes the biggest difference. I've had those calls where someone's like, I know nothing of this person, but they put that they're going to take their own life, and that was their last post. We're there for all these very unique situations. Just know that it's more than a number, and there are people, real life people, that are behind this number that want to be here and want to talk.
Before you go, can I ask you a question? When's the last time you thought life's worth living?
As a sophomore in high school, I lost my 2 best friends to suicide, while equally struggling with my own levels of depression and suicidal thoughts, but luckily I was able to find hope and beauty in the world. I wanted to spread that message with other people, so I created the Ill to Live Project, which is aimed at destigmatizing mental illness, just reminding people that there is always hope out there, and just to know that you're so not alone, and most importantly that it's okay to not be okay. One of my friend's favorite flower was the tulip, other friend's favorite color was yellow, so it's a perfect combination, and it just happens to be the flower of hope too. And it's just aimed at, especially getting into school systems, to like really start the conversations, because I feel like by talking it can begin to normalize the conversation and just know that it shouldn't be stigmatized, and we should talk about it like we do with physical illnesses. So.
That even on a good day life feels.
First, I never really thought about suicide, like it was like kind of like a hidden thing, but the more we're talking about it, the more like awareness that's coming in the media, we're talking about it, we're actually having these individuals getting help. So during this walk, there's a segment where we all held up the beach, so I was like looking around and seeing what people had, so then they said, hold up the white beach, and there's this couple in front of me that held it up. Okay, I wonder what they're doing. And then they said the meaning of the white one, that they lost a child. So that really hit me, because usually we lose a child to maybe an accident or something, but we actually lost a child to something that was preventable, something that they could have been helped with. And I just found that like really powerful for me.
Listen, we are not the things we have done, but the things we have overcome. Just take it one day at a time.
I believe the walk is very important, brings awareness. Not only that, it's important for these family members to, every day they think about their loved ones or friends or family, and I think it's nice for everyone to come together and talk to other people that are feeling the same things they're feeling on a daily basis, and it allows those people to feel comfort. And I think, people look forward to this year and give something to look forward to.
Together we stand stronger.
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 We stand stronger.